So we're live. I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the conversation with Al McFarlane. It's Friday, November 21st, 2025, coming up on Thanksgiving and the beginning of the holiday season. People are, reflecting on what it means to be family, what it means to be community, and we're certainly in an interesting time, both in our families, our communities, but in the world. Politics probably driving us all, to the limit of understanding, of patience, and of understanding the incredible leadership in our country. Well, what do you do when you're overwhelmed, and how does being overwhelmed show up for all of us, and particularly those of us who have challenges in our mental health at the same time? Today's program, we'll get into some of that. Let me introduce the host for today's program, the Dr. Oliver Williams, the eminent educator, professor. Dr. Williams, good to see you. And we're going to be talking with equally eminent Dr. Lolita King. Dr. Williams, let me turn it over to you. And thank you so much for what you do in your leadership.
Thank you, Al. Appreciate it. Good to see you. Well, Dr. King, I want to get a chance to talk to you about the grant that African American Child Wellness Institute received recently from the Minnesota Board of Aging. And we're going to be talking about Alzheimer's and dementia. And Dr. King, should I call you King-Bethel? Dr.
I just
Lolita
go by
King?
King. I get in trouble for it at home, but I just go by King. It's easier. Thank you.
Okay, that sounds okay. My wife goes by Davila Williams, and so I asked her if she wanted to be Davila because it's the tradition which she grew up. She grew up in Puerto Rico, whether they call her by Davila or that they call her Davila Cotray, and Cotray was her mother's maiden name. But anyway, there's a whole thing about that, but she chose to be called Davila Williams, so I get it. So I wanted to get a chance to hear a little bit, first of all, about who you are and you coming to the African American Child Wellness Institute. And can you talk a little bit about what your role is at ACWI?
Sure. So thank you, Mr. McFarlane, for the invite, and Dr. Williams for extending the invitation to have this very important conversation. I have been at African American Child Wellness Institute, which we shorten to ACWI because that's a lot to say, for a year and about 4 months. And prior to becoming the assistant clinic director, under the leadership of Dr. Bravada Garrett Akansanya, who is the CEO of the company, I spent decades in Hennepin County, North Point, health and wellness in particular, in clinical and leadership roles. Since I've been at ACWI, we have had the good fortune of developing and applying for grants. This one I'm particularly excited about, which is the Dementia Grant, as you mentioned, Dr. Williams, that was given to us by the Minnesota Board on Aging. It is a 2-year, $150,000 grant where we are going to be increasing the awareness of dementia and its impact on the Black community, so African Americans and those of African descent, because we know that this is one of the very misunderstood and misdiagnosed or not diagnosed elements that plague our community, the Black community. So our campaign will be for the next 2 years to increase the awareness through media, through partnership with other different avenues and venues so that we can do one-on-one, do screenings and assessments so that are culturally relevant and specific. So I'm just excited that for the next 2 years, we will be taking a deep dive. And it won't be just 2 years, I should say. This is just the start. Because we think that once we pick up the mantle with something that we are now aware of, we are responsible for continuing to make a difference.
Well, can you sort of educate the audience about what is dementia and what is Alzheimer's? So
Yes,
rather than some people calling it old timers, but
yes,
Alzheimer's disease, what is it?
yes. So, yes, there is a misunderstanding in most communities. I wouldn't just say in the African American community. Sometimes people use dementia and Alzheimer's interchangeably, but Alzheimer's not encapsulate all of the different various ways in which one may attract dementia or the impact that it has. So, dementia is actually the term that we should be using in a broader sense because dementia is basically the description of when someone has a group of conditions that impact the brain. So, dementia is the broader umbrella, and Alzheimer's falls under that. And Alzheimer's is related mostly to aging and a decline in brain functioning, but there's numerous other different types of dementia and the ways in which it impacts different parts of the brain.
Okay. Can you give some examples of perhaps some common types of ways that it impacts the brain?
Sure. So Alzheimer's, again, most of the time we think of it as age related, but
Hmm.
the part of the brain is impacted by Alzheimer's is the hippocampus and the cerebral cortex. And I don't want to get real techie, but
Right.
basically the hippocampus is, if you think of it, I like to, when I'm talking to the uh, general population, is to say the hippocampus. If you think of a hippo, they say the hippo doesn't it has a great memory, right? So the hippocampus is the part of the brain that stores memories and retains memories. And with Alzheimer's, oftentimes we'll find that we're either in an aging person, they start to have problems with short-term memory, so things that just recently happened, or their long-term memory, where they are not able to recall things from the far past, or it could be a mix of both. So that's how we can look at Alzheimer's impact on memory. But
Mm.
there are other kinds like vascular dementia, and the causes of that in the area of the brain that is impacted by this, and it's the second most common type of dementia. Uh, it uh, uh, it is impacted the blood flow of the brain. Okay, so that vascular means blood. So we're looking at how you're able to get blood flow, oxygen, and the like, and it can impact decision making. So sometimes when we look at some persons that may have a vascular dementia, then they um, oftentimes will not follow through on things, or that they are not able to engage their logical part of the brain, which is the front part of the brain, to make logical decisions. Those are the
Mm.
two most common. I could go down the list if you like of the other ones, but those are the two most common types of dementia.
Well, I have a question about you're going to be doing some work with churches. Can you talk about the program? Because you're going to be doing some assessments. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So, one of the things that our group talked about was that we wanted to make the greatest impact. Um, so, with that being said, given that we have some naturally forming groups in our community, and traditionally the Black church has been a gathering place for emotional, spiritual, social change and improvement. And so we decided to see if we can go into the churches, the Black churches in the area, and not only faith-based in terms of Baptists, but we also will be offering our screenings to the mosque in the area and other faith-based groups. So as far as the initiative right now, I think we have 11 churches that are committed to allowing us to come in and provide a really short screening to assess for whether or not a person should be referred on for further testing. So we're going to be doing screening. So we won't be diagnosing, although only clinicians like myself will be the ones doing the screening. This is just to say, hey, based on this 5 minute assessment, it looks like we need to look a little bit deeper into what might be going on with your memory. And what we've chosen to use is called the 5 cog or 5 cognitive. And it was created by maybe 6 researchers, and it's based and it did very well in populations of color, particularly Black population. So we will be using that to do a short screening. We are titling our efforts with the churches "A Wing and a Prayer." And this is an iteration that Dr. B had already started during the pandemic when she and the organization got out there in the community and screened for COVID and gave those that came for screening chicken to go. So we are replicating that with our dementia awareness campaign to offer a mini presentation on what dementia is and the screening, and then they get to go home with their
Chicken wings.
chicken wings, of course. And
Uh,
and and Dr. B actually said that maybe we could offer not only fried chicken, but baked chicken. Some churches have their own food and beverage ministry. They might want to cook their own because I think we are going to be getting donations from a very reputable uh, store. But, Black people like their chicken a certain way. So if we need to do something to it, we will.
that's right. There you go. I like that idea. I may come through to try to get tested and get a chicken wing myself. So
That's right.
it'd be nice to have some greens with that cornbread, but I'm not pushing. Uh, the thing that I'm curious about is you mentioned that there's different tests that you do, and so if somebody were to come and get assessed, um, can you tell us a little bit more about it? And then, what if? How would you know whether or not someone may need to go for further testing, and where would
Yeah.
you send them?
So yeah, so we will know because like I said, it'll be clinicians, mental health practitioners that will be doing the screenings,
Mhm.
and we will be bringing the screenings with us. And like I said, it's like 5 minutes, won't take very long. It is some of it is picture based, so then that means that it's not going to have that discriminating factor of those that may have English as a second language, or how some tests are biased and they don't really consider culture. So this is a culturally based assessment tool that will give us an idea once we score it up. The practitioners will be and are some of them already are trained to do the screening, and then once we get that, we have um, reached out to different not only resources in the community to help support people that may need support or to be directed to further testing. But we also are trying to partner with some of the medical staff to have them come in to do further screenings or referrals because some of the HMOs they want you to have all these other things done prior to them forwarding you on to a neurologist. So we will be able to take a look at those assessments, do a brief assessment, and then say, hey, it looks like there is something going on here, and we want to be able to get them formally diagnosed so they can get the care that they need. What we know, based on the research that we did in order to apply for the grant, is that Black Americans are um, vastly more likely to have the disease, and it goes undiagnosed and untreated. 6 times, I think, more so than the majority community.
Hmm.
That with that being said, that the caregivers of those that are suffering need awareness too, increased awareness, because some of them might believe that that person is just being difficult, as they age. But we know that part of the symptoms of the dementias uh, uh, is the inability to recall, poor frustration tolerance, irritability. They may lash out physically, but it's all has to do with the impact and the functioning of the brain. But sometimes we say, oh, they're just being ornery or difficult. And well, in fact, there's an underlying problem or cause for those changes in behavior and personality and demeanor.
I have a question because I know you're reaching out to the African American community, but you're also reaching out to African immigrant communities too.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about that, because when you talked about doing the assessments, how would the assessments be developed your understanding about doing assessment with African immigrant communities? Tell us about that, and whether or not those assessment tests are equally as accommodating for the African immigrant community.
Absolutely. So the 5 cog that I mentioned that we will be using as a screening tool is picture based for the most part. And so we know that oftentimes with the African immigrant community, particularly the elders of those communities, they are less likely to be able to read and write English, less known. We're talking about in their own language. Sometimes we find that the elders in those communities are not literate in their own um, uh, language of origin, and that's a bias in and of itself when we try to apply those other uh, assessment tools, because it could be just a matter of not being fluent in English language, or it could be indeed something going on with the functioning of the brain. So with these assessments, we are able to weed out that possibility and increase the possibility that we can get back down to what might be going on with that particular person. And again, this means that we are trained, and we know that these pictures and things like that are common across the nation. So we won't be um, discriminating against those that are African immigrants. And we
Are
want to be
there?
respectful of them because they're our brothers and sisters. And
That's
so as they go, so we need to be our community in general of
right.
African descent.
Yeah, are there any particular African immigrant communities that you're directing your attention to more or less?
Um, More, I wouldn't say more. I think that in general, we probably have served at Acqui more Somali um, uh, uh, clients, but that doesn't mean that we wouldn't reach out to other groups. We are completely open to those that are willing to host us, to have us come and do screenings at any of those different groups. So we're excited, we're open, and we're ready to get started on the work when we can.
Well, I know
I
that there's a
also want to
relative.
point out, Dr. Williams, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Mhm.
I think I've spoken mostly to um, the dementia that is age related, but I also have to point out that we have people that are younger than 60, and 60 is kind of the minimum age. They say that you might see that onset in terms of Alzheimer's, but with the other types of dementia, these can come from accidents. So it can come from a brain injury, like someone having a car accident, and it shows up later, or it could start to impact the brain's functioning right away, and that would include people that have traumatic brain injuries. We also know that stroke, which is very common in the Black community, is another cause and has an impact on the brain functioning. And anyone can get a stroke. And when we're talking about the Black community, stroke goes hand in hand with diabetes and high blood pressure. So we are taking a look at all of that. So we're not just saying if you're a certain age, come and get assessed, but if someone is concerned about their own memory, or a loved one or caregiver is concerned, we'd like to speak with them. We'd like to get them screened and get them moving in the direction where they can get the proper care earlier, the better. We know that there's some medications that are out there that will help to slow the progression. It doesn't stop it, but it will slow the progression of the disease, and it would help with mood and their affect, so mood, personality, and things like that. And when we do those things, we can help create a better quality of life of those that are suffering from dementia related illnesses.
Could you describe what affect is? Because
Yes.
those are terms that we may understand, but I'm wondering
Yes.
whether. But
Yes.
what is it?
That's yes. So that's kind of like your emotions, and so it could be like your mood, how you present yourself. So
Mhm.
uh, if I said that person's affect was flat, for example, then I mean that that person's energy is low. You can't read much on their face. So I apologize for using one of those clinical terms. I try to really, really just keep it so that everyone understands.
Well, that's not a problem. And,
Yeah.
I was wondering, what is a traumatic brain injury?
Yeah, so a traumatic brain injury is typically caused by some kind of major impact uh, on the brain. So the brain, if we think about car accidents
Mhm.
or motorcycle accidents, and a person's head is hit, or domestic violence. Someone can get traumatic brain injury from domestic violence where they've been hit in the head. So traumatic brain injury is it's one of those kind of conditions where we know that the brain was bruised, injured, and it impacted functioning. And so that's a classification of a group of people, young and old, who have had some kind of injury to the brain. So it wasn't a disease from within, it's something that happened from the environment that impacted that person.
Okay. Yeah. So I was curious. You talked about the uh, uh, low end, or I guess uh, that younger people can have it and can get it through traumatic brain injuries, but they can also get it from uh, the onset can happen younger as well as older. And
Absolutely.
I had some curiosity about that. If you had uh, um, a problem um, uh, with your heart,
Mhm.
and it comes out in different ways because you have problems being able to get blood flow to your brain. And you said that that's something that could result in a problem with your the onset of Alzheimer's or or dementia. Um, can you tell us a little bit about that? So if someone had problems with um, um, I'm trying to think of the term. Uh,
I'm gonna get you screened, Dr. Williams. That's what
Yeah,
we're gonna do.
please let's do that.
I'm gonna be right behind him in line.
Yeah, that's right.
Me
Yeah,
too.
Or I might cut in line, Dr. Williams.
yeah.
This is why you thinking of that. Let me jump in here quickly.
Okay.
Thank you so much. This is fascinating, Dr. King. And let me say in disclosure, I'm part of the board of directors of ACWI, African American Child Wellness Institute. And you mentioned early on that this initiative is going to engage media outreach and Insight News, McFarlane Media. The conversation with Al McFarlane will be in partnership with you and ACWI on this grant to make sure that people learn about and get the information, get accurate, reliable, culturally framed information that elevates our ability to seek and be responsible for our own healing, right? Gives us agency and gives us the power to believe that we are the prime directors of our health and well-being. And so, my question comes from my personal story of being in a family that has experienced both dementia and Alzheimer's. And one of my earliest memories, if you don't mind me being personal, I think maybe I was 7 or 8, or I'm not sure, very young. And where we lived in Kansas City, Missouri, we had a large multi-generational family that lived in a multi-story brownstone
Right.
on 28th in Brooklyn. Somebody knows the neighborhood, right? Where the dean of the family, Mr. Powell, owned the building, and his family on the first floor, my grandmother and another family on the second floor, and then me and my mom and dad, my older sister, in a kitchenette, kind of like an attic that made livable on the third floor. So families, generations deep. My earliest young memories include seeing Aunt Della. Aunt Della, I'm trying to think of how we referred to her. I think we referred to her as crazy, but I can't remember. That idea of her came later in life, or did I see her that way when I was a child? But I remember that they kept Aunt Della kind of in a locked room
Yes.
in that second story, like in my grandmother's place. She's my grandmother's aunt. That's who she was.
Mhm.
And but she didn't have her mind. She lost her mind and was not, coherent, and couldn't be left unattended, and couldn't be left even to be anywhere in the house except for that one room under lock and key, you
Mhm.
know? And
Yeah.
so that's my first memory of somebody. I remember her when they bring her out of the room, they put her in a rocking chair and she just rocked back and forth, back and forth. And somehow, Dr. King and Dr. Williams, I got a memory of her rocking herself out of the chair, falling forward on the floor, throwing up and dying. Dying. That's my memory. And
Wow.
then fast forward, I think that my mother experienced, memory loss. Her mother experienced memory loss. So, and then I have a cousin who's in my generation, one of the oldest ones who died recently, but he knew he was experiencing dementia and would tell us that he was in less control and tried to manage and navigate until he died. So
Mhm.
all this leads to Al McFarlane. I'm now the elder in the family, or just about the oldest, one of the oldest in my family group. And I'm trying to see what's ahead for me.
Yeah.
And my wife tells me all the time, you forget the stuff. I got a sign on my door that says phone, wallet, keys, stove off, etc., reminding me to check that stuff before I
Yeah.
leave.
Right.
What do I do?
Right. Well, you brought up some really good points, and uh, that there is a genetic component or link sometimes in families with certain types of dementia. So that's why it's also important, because if we know that that is something that has been diagnosed in our elders, then some of the younger generations can get ahead of some of that by improved diet, exercise, staying away from excessive alcohol use. That's another way that a person
Mhm.
can acquire a dementia-related
Mm.
disease. So it's important all the way around. And so and there's a natural part of aging where we start to forget certain things. But when we should be alarmed for our loved ones and maybe for ourselves is when it's constant, it's impacting other areas of your life, like social connections, at work. You're missing things at work if you're still working and not retired. The mood or that person's presentation, personality has changed drastically. I do know that a lot of times with dementia related disorders that they some of the people get irritated. They easily get agitated, and
Mhm.
you'd be like, that wasn't like that person. But I can relate to that. But also the fact that we have to make sure the caregivers are okay too, because it's not an easy task.
Right.
And if I'm being transparent, my father um, acquired dementia from a stroke.
Mm.
He was the type of dad that didn't go to the doctor very often. I always thought of him as superhuman. And when he had that stroke, I in essence lost my father that I had before,
Mhm.
because his short-term memory was gone. And so because I'm in the field I am now and had been at that time, I think I was able to navigate it a lot better than some other family members, because it can be very frustrating because of the way that they present. And they want to have as much control over their lives as they can. And they see it slipping away. And so if I didn't hear the same story 1,000 times over, maybe in the same conversation, it it wasn't uncommon until
Mhm.
he passed away. And so and I know that his was related to high blood pressure, but he
Mhm.
did end up with the dementia after the stroke. And so we have to look at all of our different areas of health. We're looking at this particular thing too. And so we're not going to leave caregivers out. My maternal aunt had Parkinson's, and that could be age related. It could be genetic.
Mhm.
And my first cousin, was so frustrated. No matter how many times I told him, she's not doing it on purpose.
Right.
He would be just upset, overwhelmed, and it was like I really think I failed him in a sense, because the knowledge that I have, he didn't have. But all I can do is say, hey, that's not who she is, and you know that this is what Parkinson has done to Auntie.
Hmm.
So
So what's the difference between Parkinson, Alzheimer's, and dementia? Are they all the same or variations on the
oh,
theme or?
so again, remember we said at the beginning, dementia is the umbrella
Okay.
that all of the different other different types of uh, impacted brain functioning falls under the other diseases. So it's dementia just means there's been an impact on the functioning of the brain.
Okay.
So that's what dementia is. But the different ways in which it presents itself in the different areas of the brain that it impacts and the different diagnosis that you may get will be based on what part of the brain, what areas of function have been lost. So Parkinson again will fall under that. It is a cousin, so to speak, to Alzheimer's. So all
I
types
always thought
of lost
Parkinson
care.
had to do with the physical impairment as well. People either shaking hand or
Yep,
leg or something.
yep,
Is that a sign
yep.
of?
Uncontrollable shaking. So
Yeah.
it's impacting the motor uh, uh, area of the brain that is responsible for motor functioning.
Hmm.
And it does impact uh, memory and mood and functioning in other ways.
So what's
Yeah,
motor
yeah.
functioning?
The motor, yeah, motor functioning is the things that have to do with our movement, the movement of our body.
Hmm.
So some of the things that might happen to a person with Parkinson's, for example, is that you find that they may start to have an unsteady gait, or they have tremors. so that and I have tremors, but mine is just essential tremors, and it's not related to a disease, thank God. But it motor functioning is our legs, our arms, how we are able to walk and to sit. So all of those things that um, we used to move can be impacted, and ultimately with some of the dementia-related diseases, some of the that disease process might lead to them not being able to breathe anymore, or their
Mhm.
tongue can't swallow, the throat is restricted.
Mhm.
So it just depends on the type of diagnosis and disease,
And
whether
gait is
yeah,
a person's
it
gait
impacts
is
your motor
their
functioning.
ability.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, Doc.
I was saying that a person's gait is their. I had a client who had a traumatic brain injury, and he fell out. He was cutting a tree, or his brother and he were cutting a tree, and saw the limb out underneath him, and
Mm,
he fell and he started having real difficulty in terms of doing things. And so he was working. He lost his job because he couldn't function in the job. But in terms of his gait, he wasn't walking the same.
yep.
He wasn't able to move the same in the same way that he had before. He used to ride motorcycles. He had to give that up.
Mhm,
It also affected his interactions with his wife.
mhm.
So that was some challenges that he had to deal with. So as we're talking about the impact of it, I'm also curious about what things can we do to prevent certain things from happening in terms of dementia. You talked about strokes. My sister 2 months ago had a stroke and she passed away last month. And
Sorry.
yeah, me too. And so, but as I think about these things, I keep thinking about ways that we could prevent uh, the onset of some of these things. And you talked about substance abuse or alcohol in particular, because most people who have substance abuse issues, many of them have alcohol problems.
Yes.
So, what kinds of things might you suggest are things that people could look at to prevent some of the things
Yeah.
from happening?
Sure. So, as both you, Dr. Williams, and Mr. McFarlane mentioned earlier, um, we we need to take charge of our own lives, and part of that is maintaining healthy living, and that's not always easy. But the things that we can do, we should do. My dad's stroke was probably preventable. I'm pretty sure it was, but he did drink heavily, and he smoked since from the time he was, I think he said 9 years old, until he had the stroke in his mid 70s.
Wow.
Um, and so he had high blood pressure, and he didn't take his medicine. So when we're looking at our lifestyle choices, sometimes it inevitably catches up to us.
Yeah.
And so, as you mentioned, Dr. Williams, we can diagnose someone. Sometimes we will diagnose someone with a substance-related dementia, and that usually is, like you said, alcohol. So we need to be thinking about things in moderation. We're not saying just have to eat, but how about uh, going for your annual checkups, making sure that you have the proper water intake, making sure that if you are using substances, that you get support so that you can manage it, and what we eat, that we exercise. So all of those things are important because we know that there are different avenues in which we can end up with a diagnosis of some dementia related disease and illness.
Right. Well, you mentioned kidney disease, uh, one of the things that I noticed in our preparation for your your discussion today is that the things that can uh, you can look at in terms of risk factors would be heart disease, kidney disease that may produce stroke,
Mhm.
uh, and sets of other issues. So diabetes is related to, and high blood pressure
Yes,
produce kidney disease, but
yes,
it also has an impact in terms of heart disease as well.
yes.
And those things have influence on dementia and and Alzheimer's.
Mhm.
So, and if you have some control of those things, I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and they were talking about that they had just ended up getting a diagnosis around heart disease, and someone talked to me about kidney disease and such. If you're able to control those things, you start to reduce problems in other areas. And,
Absolutely.
and I think that those are things that we need to really look at in terms of one's health.
Yes.
And but I think, you know, in talking to some doctors, and I would ask them and say, well, how can you prevent having a stroke? And then they said they would talk about reducing the potential for having kidney disease and
Mhm.
having heart disease and having diabetes.
Yes.
And if you deal with those things, you reduce some of your risk. And it sounded like those things are interconnected in many ways.
Absolutely. So the things that you're talking about, Dr. Williams, you hit the nail right on the head. Because when we go to the doctor, we get warning signs if we're going
Yeah,
to the doctor. We get blood tests. They'll say you're pre-diabetic. That is the time when you can turn things around. You
that's
can
right.
reverse the impact. When we're looking at high blood pressure and getting that under control. If you start with those things and stabilize those things, then it's less likely that you'll end up with something that is not reversible. We cannot, there is no reversing dementia related disorders. Once you have it, it's progressive.
Hmm.
So we'd want to take a look at all of those other risk factors and all of those other ailments that people are living with and suffering with and say, let's stop this and turn it around so that when you as you age you won't have other things that will ultimately impact your quality of life astronomically because if you have any of those things going on like heart disease or high blood pressure that that impacts you, but then you add on top of that this uh, reduced functioning of the brain,
Yeah.
then you're really going to be suffering a lot more than um, than you deserve, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, are there places that people can go to deal with some of these issues? So let's say that you have someone that you do an assessment of, and you can see that some of the issues are coming up in terms of their short-term or long-term memory. Is there some place in the Twin Cities that you can send people to, or will you be doing it at Acqui, working
No,
with?
so yeah, so as clinicians, we already a lot of us have worked with clients who have age-related Alzheimer's, or they may have a traumatic brain injury from a accident or what have you. So we already work with clients that may have some of these ailments, but that is not our specialty. That this is more of a physical related disease. And so, what we will likely do is, in our planning, is to get them to their primary care providers so that they can put that on their radar. A lot of times, medical doctors don't screen for that, even though they can because they don't have the time or they haven't been given the information. So we have to start there oftentimes based on the insurance, right? And so then So once we refer them to their or get them hooked up with a medical doctor, they can get a official diagnosis. Then that might open them up to being able to be referred on to a neurologist and have a neuropsychological exam. That doesn't mean that's the only way, but that is probably the most common way in which we will get those that are screened into getting those medical services. As part of this, as it relates to the social support and the emotional support of that individual and their caregiver and their extended family, we will be doing a lot of hands-on support at ACWI. But not only that, we will uh, hopefully in the years to come train some of those that are in retirement and nursing homes that care for our elders, so that they recognize some of the symptoms that may be emerging or already there. And then we also have several organizations within the Twin Cities including the Minnesota Board on Aging, that can help us with referring our clients in our community
Mhm.
to other resources that would be helpful in supporting them in living the best quality life that they can.
Okay, so as you mentioned, when you talked about primary uh, uh, physicians, let's say
Hmm.
primary care, you're talking about physicians, as you mentioned,
Yes,
primary
medical MDs.
care,
Yes.
and that
Hmm.
would be able to help them to uh, get connected to places that could be
Yes.
supportive of them. But
Yeah.
do primary care physicians know?
Um, uh, they got into medical school, so they do know.
Yeah, but
They
a
are
lot of
aware.
times,
But
yeah, they don't.
whether or not they have the time to assess for all those things, and they're that thorough, I
Yeah,
mean, unfortunately, based on how we do medicine here in the United States, and the 5-minute consultation, you can't bring in two symptoms, two issues at one time. They're
right.
really being stressed, right?
Yeah,
So I'm not blaming them at all.
yeah,
I think it has a lot to do with if they stay longer with the patient than what's allotted, 7 to 10 minutes, whatever that number is nowadays, they're losing money. And so
right.
that's not good for their employers, right, in their mind. So we have to get ahead, just like we have to get ahead of all of the things that we are concerned about. I often coach clients to come in with a list, write it down, be as specific as you can. If you can do a log for two weeks, 7 days, and say at this time this happened, this was the impact. If we're talking about Alzheimer's, I noticed that my auntie was uh, uh, very irritable. She's been like that recently. She sleeps a lot. She's not able to form her sentences. All of those things matter. And then it's putting the puzzle pieces together for the medical field, so that they can dig deeper. And unfortunately, sometimes based on whether or not a person has insurance, first of all, um, or are underinsured or all that nonsense, um, it may be a barrier for a clinician like myself to say, hey, I'd like for you to get, I want to refer you for a neuropsychological evaluation.
Mhm.
Um, Based on their insurance, they may say, no, we need a referral from their primary care doctor, right? And so in order to kind of reduce the red tape that might come with that, our goal is to say, hey, you need to be taking a look at all of your medical concerns anyway. Let's start with partnering with your doctor, your primary doctor that you're seeing, so that they are aware of what's going on. This is the screening, and then they can take up a mantle to help with monitoring that, to prescribe medications that may slow the disease or help with other things associated with it, and get them to the further testing that will give them the clinical medical diagnosis, the accurate for what it is. Because when we're doing the screening, we're saying there's something going on with the brain. It might be dementia related, but we won't tease that out in our efforts with the
So
If
Dr.
I can,
techniques.
King, I
What
have a
what
couple of questions, Dr. King.
Sure.
One is that how prevalent is dementia in the general population, and how prevalent, if you know this, is it in the Black community? That's one question. And the second question I'll ask from the vantage point of, a person that's concerned. Do you find most people who come to the clinic or a clinical, situation come of their own wondering, expressing some concern about their health that ends up being diagnosed as as dementia or Alzheimer's, or is it more likely the case that somebody who's a caregiver
mm,
will bring somebody, and if the person is being brought, how does that person, in your experience, usually react, respond? It seems to me, I'm trying to think, would I be hostile if my daughter or if my wife, carried me to a caregiver because they felt I wasn't acting right when I kind of feel I am, or I can explain my quirkiness to me, to my satisfaction, but not to theirs? What kinds of scenarios? Is that a fair question to ask you?
I think it is fair. And I think over the years seen a mixture of both. Um, when I had a couple of seniors that were really concerned about their memory, and what I have typically told those clients, do a screening. But when a person is that concerned about it, typically it's not a dementia related disorder,
mm,
because the awareness that a person has that they're concerned about their memory tells us one thing, that they are noticing changes. But more than likely, those changes may be stress related. I mean, it could be a number of different things.
Sure.
Um, Most of the time, I found that loved ones have brought their concerns forward. But also, in working with a client weekly, if I see changes that haven't been there, they're forgetful, and I know a history of domestic violence or substance abuse, or they had a bad car accident, whatever, some
mm,
circumstance I'm aware of, I might see that as a clue to move
Mhm.
forward and investigate further. So
Mhm.
it can come both ways, but we also do have those in our community to say, there's nothing wrong with me. And they are kind of resistant to a certain degree of getting help. But that doesn't mean that we don't try to get it for them, right?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
and I think that one thing that's really been interesting to me is when I've seen caregivers uh, notice that a family member is forgetful, and then they keep trying to repeat the same thing over and over again to that
Yes.
family member as if that's going to change their circumstance,
Mhm.
and that they don't want them to be forgetful, so they're going to continue to tell them correct, or sometimes say things like there are people who may have forgot that there was a loved one that passed away,
Mhm.
and then you remind them that the person died, and
Mhm.
then they relive the experience again, the sadness for a while. And
Mhm.
so different ways of being able to think about that. But um, I had some questions, Dr. King. What is a neurologist? And so when
Yes.
you talk about getting a person to go to get neurological tests, what is a neurologist?
Yep. So a neurologist is a medical doctor that has a specialty in the functioning and the disease process of the brain. So a medical professional can be a general doctor, but then we have others that specialize in different parts of the body. And the neurology looks particularly at the brain and the brain functioning.
Thanks.
So that would be a number of tests to see if the blood flow is right, if there's any blockages in the arteries and the flow of the brain, or the heart, is the heart pumping enough to get oxygen to the brain. They're looking for signs that some parts of the brain may have died, or uh, it's got different overgrowth of cells, and that's maybe brain cancer. So they specialize in the health and the functioning of the brain.
Yeah.
And go back to Mr. McFarlane, when you mentioned the prevalence, we in the research that we've done, there's a average of 6 million Americans that may be diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and the African Americans have a higher prevalence. So we are more at risk, and we seem to exhibit the signs of Alzheimer's in particular, more so. I think I want to say 3 to 6% times more than the white counterparts.
Okay.
So Alzheimer's in particular impacts us most out of all of the different ethnic and racial groups. So it's a problem.
And is that in any way associated with our presence here and our history here out of enslavement, out of the legacy of oppression and fighting to, in a sense, protect our sense of being human beings in an environment that did not recognize our humanity?
How can it not?
Mhm.
How can it not?
Mhm.
We have had centuries of being in heightened alert of the dangers, seen and unseen. And when you have that type of experience from when you out of the birth canal, where we're at risk of being killed, destroyed, whatever you want to call it, it changes the makeup of the chemicals in the body.
Hmm.
We know it doesn't only impact the blood pressure, which it does. It impacts the functioning of the heart. It impacts the functioning of the brain. With heightened alert, your immune system is diminished because you don't have all of those resources where you are in a relaxed state so that you can restore. Our sleep is supposed to restore us,
Mhm.
right? And when we relax after there's been a threat, we're supposed to go back to a state of calm. But how could our ancestors have ever done that? I don't think they did,
Mhm.
right? And so historically, they've had to protect self at all costs and protect family. Then sleep is not going to be restorative as much as it should be, right? I sleep, but it's not going to be that quality deep sleep that regenerates all those things that we need in our body. So, yes, there's a direct link, if you ask me,
Yes.
to what we've gone through and where we are now with every disease process that we experience, which is why we are often the ones that have the highest prevalence or the uh, prevalence or the highest rate of any particular physical or social ailment.
Well, it's at 2 o'clock, and there are some things that I wanted to have you tell us about, Dr. King, with regard to resources in the community. But before we do that, I still may need to get the evaluation, but the term that I was,
Now
the
you got to
term
be
that
over there helping us screen, Dr. Williams. It was all in love. We know you have a brilliant mind that's still intact.
well, let's hope so. Let's pray that that continues. But the term I was looking for was a pacemaker. And
Hmm.
so pacemakers help you to get blood to the brain.
Mhm.
But I've got had a pacemaker put in because
Mhm.
blood wasn't getting to my brain,
Huh.
and so I'm wondering whether or not. So thank God I got it because I was fainting every 20 minutes before I had it put in, and
Mhm.
but I wonder whether or not those things, as people are affected by issues associated with the heart, whether that can influence a person long term. Now, realize that, you know, uh, uh, this gift of this machine, it lasts for a long time. I had it when I got the pacemaker. I had a friend of mine tell me that her father had a pacemaker for 30 years, and he passed away before the pacemaker stopped working. So I'm not
Right.
too worried about that.
Yeah.
But I do wonder about the effect of things that happen to a person that influences how blood gets to the brain
Hmm.
and what things that people can do to be informed. But you did talk about prevention and
Yes.
things that we need to
Yes.
take a look at. I wanted to
Yes.
have you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to have you leave us with some resources that exist. I see that one of them is Volunteers of America. They have a care support and dementia service program.
Hmm.
And
Um, mhm,
tell us a little bit more about some of the other resources.
mhm. So there is, depending upon what type of dementia-related disorder that may be present, um, we can refer you to Alzheimer's Association. There's different organizations that deal with education, prevention, social supports that are out there. And we will be providing resources. We're going to have a resource book with culturally specific caregivers in in the Minneapolis area that folk can go to tap into those resources. There are memory care facilities that are open to educating the public. So the list goes on and on. If you have any question about, and you absolutely can call ACWI. We are very responsive to the needs and the questions of the community. We can't get it all in at one time on a platform like this, but absolutely we can mail out or email resources that we've started to gather that are in the community already. And I think that we'll hopefully be able to establish some type of consortium so that we're working hand in hand with not only the medical doctors, but with also, like I said before, the nursing retirement homes and with caregivers who may feel unsupported to do therapy to help them to kind of guide them along and to prevent the progression of the disease. We also want to get young people involved. The old African proverb of when an elder dies in our community, a library burns. I mean, if if we can record some of the wisdom that we already have and get that prior to the end of life of those that have come before us, because we owe them to do better because they sacrificed for us. I think that we're hoping that we can get young people involved with their awareness and also engaging with our loved ones. Like Mr. McFarlane said, back in the day, you just said that Uncle Johnny was special and he got locked away because he was agitated or what have
Mhm.
you. And that was all a symptom of perhaps Alzheimer's or some other
Mhm.
vascular dementia or something. So it's really important that we get everybody involved and to not exclude them from our families and our community because they still have so much to give. And even if they tell a story over and over again, maybe we should document that and that be part of our guideposts to getting us to better health so that we can prevent us getting things that are incurable like dementia related disorders.
Thank you, Dr. King, for visiting with us today.
Thank
Brother
you for
Man, I'm
hosting.
going
Well,
to
thank
pass
you, Dr. King. Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. Thank you so much. What a wonderful show, and I know what I need to do. And I invite all of our viewers and listeners to pay attention and to check out. Go out to the website for the African American Child Wellness Institute to go get more information and to find out if you are ready for an assessment. With that, we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Thanks to
Thank
both.
you.
Bye. God
Bye.
bless.
Let's see. And
Thank you, Mr. McFarland.
thank you. I'm trying to pull the closing credits here. Just one second. if I can. Let's see. Our regular engineer is not on, so I'm doing engineering duty. And I don't
Yeah,
think I'm able to do it the way
I
it
was trying
should
to
be
get off.
done. Industry.
Oh, I'm trying to get off.